Hello, this is Jessi Sletten from Empowering Postpartum. Welcome to the Spanglish World Networks on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. And while you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is totally free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, and on all smart TVs 2016 and forward. I am happy to be back with another amazing episode of Empowering Postpartum with me, Jessi Sletten, your postpartum empowerment coach, helping you feel calm, confident, and prepared for your postpartum experience before birth so that you can have the slow and connected fourth trimester you deserve. And I'm here today with my special guest, Jennifer Grieco, who is not only a fellow Coloradan, but she's also a wonderful midwife with 15 plus years of experience. And she's going to be sharing her wisdom and expertise with us on all things water birth. So welcome, Jen. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Jessi. I'm so excited to be here. This is such a great topic to cover.
Absolutely. So I kind of like to get us just started with you sharing a little bit about yourself, your journey, what led you to be called to this work, and then we'll kind of dive into all the juicy stuff.
Sounds great. My midwifery journey actually began long before I even knew I wanted to become a midwife. I had my first son in 1996, and that kind of dove me into the path of what I thought was medical care. So I went to school to become a nurse.
Okay.
And after practicing in that field for some time, and after the birth of my third child, I realized I don't know that I want to stay in the medical model anymore. I had heard the word doula had been buzzing around for a while. So I explored that a bit, but reached out to a local home birth midwife. Her name is Karen Baker in Yucaipa, California. And she took me on as a student. And so I went back to school and chose to become a certified professional midwife because they had more autonomy at that time in the state of California. And then I launched my home birth practice and kind of hit the ground running, and I never looked back.
Gosh, that's amazing. You know, I think it's funny. A lot of people who I talk to in like the doula fields, the midwifery fields, all these kind of things, most people start in the medical model. And I see that they start to gravitate toward more of these client-based, holistic approaches. So I think it's kind of an interesting trend to see, but it sounds like you come with a lot of experience for sure.
And what's also great is I've had 3 hospital births. 2 epidural births, 1 natural, and then my 8-year-old daughter was actually born at home in water. So it was really interesting to kind of come full circle and go, I've experienced a lot of different birth scenarios, but to finally have that water birth, I'm finally understood the sweet spot that I had been sharing with clients for so long.
Oh, I love that so much. It's really neat to be able to have all those different perspectives personally and then professionally as well, because I just feel like that is that way to connect even deeper with the clients that you serve. So I think that's really cool. Well, thank you for sharing your story. This is going to be a really exciting conversation. I don't know much about water births, if I'm being honest. So I am excited to just learn more about this, beautiful option. And I know we have a few things you wanted to touch on, but one of the first topics we were going to talk about, which I think comes up a lot when I talk to birthing people, is just the safety of water birth. And I think a lot of people have questions around that. Some of people are more hesitant because they don't quite understand the safety. So I'd love for you to just share with us all the things you know about the safety of water birth.
So water birth tends to be a really controversial topic even now. It really started to gain popularity in the 80s and 90s. There were some midwives doing births, and it was still illegal in several states to even practice as a midwife. But that is kind of where midwives started encouraging water birth or experimenting with that a little bit. And it's still to this day, even all that time that's passed, it has become kind of this debate in the medical model and even in the midwifery model. Thankfully, we do have records of several studies that have been done in a variety of countries. It is definitely more popular in other countries than in the US, which we are hoping to change through education. The biggest thing is that it's a really hard concept to understand how a child can be born in water as
Mm.
opposed to land births, which I know that might sound like a really funny term, but that's how I refer to a lot of the
Mhm.
midwifery community refers to births outside of water as a land birth. So,
Yeah.
our assessment is different. As providers, our level of control is different.
Mm.
So really having that water birth experience requires an incredible amount of knowledge and
Yeah.
trust in the process.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think those are the big things that people are hesitant about. And I do see more places offering water birth, which I think is
Yeah.
fantastic. But
Mhm.
it's are you going to only let your client or patient labor in the tub? And will
Mhm.
they have to get out prior to birthing? Or will
Right.
you let them complete the process in the tub?
Yeah, and that resonates with me because I definitely labored in the tub at home before I headed to the hospital with my second. And it was just amazing, like, how quickly my labor, like, what
Yeah.
started going when I got in the water. Like, it was just like, "Wow, okay, I see the benefit for sure," and it just helped
Mhm.
relax me so much more. So it would have been
Yeah.
interesting to see. I didn't have a home birth, but if I were to have completed my birthing process in the tub, I wonder, how different that would have been because it was stressful. I ended up being like almost delivering in the elevator at the hospital because I waited a little too long to get to the hospital. It was a little stressful toward the end, but everything
Wow.
worked out fine. But yeah, I always kind of wondered that. I'm like, probably would have been a little less stressful if I would have planned to have him at home and just completed the
Yeah.
process in the tub.
And that is something that we hear often because the medical model, we tell patients in the hospital to labor at home as long as you can
Yeah.
and then come in when you're in a great active pattern. An
Mhm.
active pattern typically means contractions 4 to 5 minutes apart.
Mhm.
That is different for everyone. And it's really hard to put an umbrella statement on individuals. We all
Yeah.
labor differently, we all birth differently. But I love what you said about being able to labor in the tub because
Mhm.
one, we're in your home, which that's your
Yes.
environment. We are
Mhm.
mammals at our core. And so we look
Mhm.
for that safe space and our body knows what to do.
Yeah.
Water has so many benefits. It actually increases the oxytocin production, which is a huge
Oh.
component in natural physiological labor.
Mhm.
Um, we know that relaxation, it's comfort and self-initiated instincts. So when
Mhm.
someone is free to labor and birth in the tub, you are more likely to switch positions. That tub
Mhm.
is a great size. Usually they're inflatable. The tubs that I use are about 115 gallons,
Wow.
and they're pretty deep, which is great because you can submerge fully and really feel weightless. So
Wow.
our perception of surges or contractions are different because the water
Mhm.
helps support that. Um,
Yeah.
it gives people a little bit of a layer of privacy, which I think is
Mhm.
really sweet, especially for people that have experienced prior traumatic births.
Yeah.
That layer of water kind of helps us feel like we're safe and we're secure. It's like a little nest that you're in. It also allows us to conserve our energy. We are able to empty our bladder in the pool, which not
Yeah.
many people know. Urine is sterile. Birth is not a sterile environment. It is not meant to be a sterile situation. So
Yeah.
we encourage our clients urinate in the tub if you need to. An empty bladder is a really great thing.
Mhm.
Um, you have the freedom to still snack and hydrate when you're in the tub. We
Yeah.
have little tables that we set up, and you can hydrate as necessary. Easy snacks are available if you need them. Um, Water is just fantastic at interrupting pain signals, and the
Mm.
studies have shown that we have more successful vaginal births without lacerations, without complications in water.
Hmm.
Pretty
That's really
wild.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it because I do feel like my contractions were less painful when I was in the tub, and which is
Yes.
probably why I waited so long to go in because I
Mhm.
didn't quite register, like, this was my second birth, so been through this before, right? But they were
Yeah.
very different experiences. I was induced with my first and was at the
Mm.
hospital for hours and labored. Did not want that for my second experience. So I
Yeah.
wasn't even I've done it before, I'm like, "Is this is it now that I should leave? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not really sure, you know? So, but I did notice that definitely that decrease in pain when I was in the tub. And I loved what you said about being able to switch positions because my own personal experience, I had that as well. Like I started on my back and then, but it was so easy for me to just go on my hands and knees and then just try to
Mhm.
like feel what my body needed. It just seemed so much easier to do that, to tap into that just more intuitive birthing scenario.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's so self-initiated. It is
Mhm.
very rare for me to make suggestions to my clients in labor. I really follow their lead, and so watching them go from leaning back against the sides of the tub to leaning forward or getting into a runner's lunge and moving their hips, there's so much opportunity for mobility in there, as
Yeah,
opposed to lying flat on your back where the sacrum's compressed and doesn't have the space to be mobile. The
right.
outcomes are really different. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so I'm wondering, as far as your experience, I know you practice in Colorado here, but you know, just as
Mhm.
an example, is there birthing centers and hospitals here in Colorado that do allow the water birth like fully, or are most of
Mhm.
them like, no, you got to get out of the tub at a certain point?
So most of the birth centers in the area do have tubs.
That's good.
What I like to stress, and one of the things we can talk about are some of the questions to ask providers later on. Um, it always depends on the comfort of the provider that is attending your birth.
Yeah, that
And
makes
that
sense.
works at home. That is why if water birth is something really important to somebody, they need to ask their provider, how comfortable are you with this?
Yeah,
So the comfort of the provider is the biggest thing. What most people are comfortable doing is allowing somebody to labor in water.
yeah.
There are different protocols to transition from birthing in the tub to getting out,
Mm,
but they're pretty minimal.
mm.
We remind everybody that we are still able to assess fetal heart tones in water.
Oh, wow.
Midwives are pretty flexible, and we
Mhm.
tend to get into all these bizarre positions because we're following the lead of our client.
Yeah.
Um, but you don't have to get out of the water to have your heart tones checked. We
Hmm.
monitor with a Doppler, which is intermittently,
Okay.
and our regulations state a variety of intermissions that we have to do. So every 30 minutes in active labor, during pushing, you listen every other contraction. There's a whole protocol,
Oh,
but
good.
we are able to do that gently and efficiently without interrupting the labor process.
I love that.
Um, yeah, which is really amazing and helpful. If your water is broken, you can absolutely birth in the tub.
Mhm.
But again, I would equip somebody with a list of questions.
Yeah.
One of our local hospitals just redid their labor and delivery unit, their birth center, and they've installed tubs in a couple of the rooms. So
Wow.
that is something I'm really hoping to learn more about what that looks like because
Yeah.
that's a great option for people who might be more comfortable in a hospital setting
Yeah.
or the higher risk where
Mm.
it necessitates that next level of medical care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing, giving more
Yeah.
options in more areas of how you can birth, and it just feels empowering for the birth giver to be able to have those options to make the choices that fit best for them. I
Definitely.
like what you said. It reminded me, I'm trying to think exactly the way you put it, but, it's gonna escape my brain now. It'll probably come back. But it was something about, you know, asking your providers, but we're gonna talk about that in a little bit, about the questions you can
Mhm.
ask, to make sure that you are well informed, that you're on the same page with your provider, which will be really good. But I did wonder, oh, I remembered. My brain, ADHD
Yeah.
sometimes.
No,
Like,
that's all right.
um, but as far as safety for the baby, can you touch on that a
Mm.
little bit? Because I know when I've talked to clients in the past, their biggest concern is, well, is it safe for baby? Like, how can I deliver them underwater? What if they take a breath of air? Those are kind of the common questions that I've run into. So I'd love to get your perspective on
This is one of my favorite things to talk
that.
about. One of the things that I do in my midwifery practice is all of our prenatal care is an hour long per visit. So that
Wow.
means all of my clients are getting a lot of education.
Love that.
That is a key component to choosing the birth outside of the hospital is you
Mm,
want to empower yourself with knowledge
yes.
for any scenario, right? So all of my clients can actually share the same information because it's been repeated so many times. I had a funny story about a dad that was at church and somebody was asking him, how safe is it? Like, how is your baby gonna go, like, be able to breathe if they're born
Mhm.
underwater? And they came into their next prenatal visit and they were laughing because I guess he went into this whole speech about the safety of it. So
He's like, "Well, let me tell you, I know all the answers to this."
I was
That's
just so
great.
proud of him. I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah,
my job is done."
that's awesome.
So yes, there are huge benefits for newborns. The biggest question I do get is, what will I do if my baby takes a breath underwater? So
Mhm.
when we are born, we are dependent on that placental perfusion. So the
Mm.
placenta is responsible for the oxygenation of the baby during pregnancy and immediately after birth, as long
Mm.
as that cord stays attached.
Okay.
In my practice personally, we always do delayed cord clamping, and that does not mean 2 minutes, that does not mean
Mhm.
6 minutes. That means that cord is cut when the family is ready to cut the cord,
Mhm.
and it can be up to an hour sometimes.
Yeah.
We also know that 1/3 of a full-term baby's blood supply is actually in the placenta when the baby is born.
Yeah. Wow.
That's a lot
That's
of
a
blood.
yeah.
So we're relying on that blood flow to help the baby move from a placental perfusion to the cardiovascular system.
Yeah.
So as baby starts to go through that labor process and goes from crowning to head out in the water, we do pause. This is a different stage of labor now. The head is
Mm.
out. We wait for the next contraction for the body to be born. And
Mhm.
this is again hands off. This is directed by the birther every single time. Um, as soon as that head comes out, we are looking for reflexes in the baby, sometimes that
Mhm.
Moro reflex that our newborns
Mhm.
make.
Yeah.
I see that underwater. They
Wow.
blink their eyes, they do a little
Mhm.
grimace.
Mm.
There's a variety of different reflexes that we as providers are paying attention to let us know baby's doing great.
Okay.
The most beautiful part of this is that baby will not take a breath until they hit the surface of the air. And here is
Wow.
why. We are equipped with the trigeminal nerve, which runs along the side of our face,
Mm.
and the sensors that activate that trigeminal nerve, which initiates our breathing, our first breath, are sensors around our nose, our cheeks, and our chin. So it's this area. So that part of the baby needs to be exposed to air to initiate the lung expansion and bring in
Mhm.
O2.
Huh.
So that's fascinating.
That is really
And
fascinating. I
unless
never
you know the science behind it,
yeah.
it's kind of a tricky thing, but it does make sense. Your
Yeah.
baby is still relying on that placenta. So
Mhm.
we don't rush that process. And it is a little different being born in water. All babies tend to come out a little hypoxic, which means, those blue hands and feet,
Mm.
because they're changing their whole system, right? Their entire system is going, this is a huge undertaking. Um,
Right.
and the biggest thing we can do is honestly be patient and
Mm.
allow that process to unfold. So these babies come out a little hypoxic. Most of them are not screaming. They kind of
Mm.
look around for a second.
Mhm.
Um, and I joke that I don't have many rules in my practice because it's so client driven.
Mhm.
But as your baby emerges, whether it's on land or in water, obviously, that baby's looking around to find the faces to put with the voices that they've been hearing the whole pregnancy.
Yeah, that connection piece is so
Yeah.
crucial. Yeah.
So we
That's
slow
fascinating.
way down and honor
Yes.
that process. And then baby goes directly skin to skin because, as we know, mom's body starts to regulate baby's temperature and they are still considered one unit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That is really I loved that it was, like, science mixed in with that
Mhm.
explanation because I feel like that
Yeah.
really helps with understanding, okay, how truly safe is this? And so we have all this evidence to help us make these informed decisions is super important.
Yeah.
Something you said about regulating temperature. So, I wonder, like, does the water, like, affect that in any way? I don't know how you keep it heated or anything like that as far as the
Mhm.
temperature of the water potentially dropping the potential or the temperature of the mom and the baby. So I'm not really sure how that works, but is there a way to kind
So
of control that?
we do joke around of, old school midwives boiling pots of water and pouring them
Yeah.
to we do it sometimes still. It's not often, but we do.
Mhm.
Um, so my clients use a regular garden hose,
Okay.
and they usually attach it to the shower.
Ah,
And that is typically how they fill the tub.
mm,
Ideally, the perfect temperature is about no hotter than 99. I'd say anywhere between 97 to 99.
mhm.
Um, I use a laser thermometer to measure the temperature, which is
Okay.
really efficient.
Yeah.
And then we can always heat or cool it if we need
Mm,
to with pots of hot water, or we can drain some out and add cold if we need to.
yeah.
What's really shocking is these tubs typically hold heat pretty well,
Mm,
incredibly well, even in winter. And we're
wow.
also bumping up the temperature in the house to make sure that it stays at a nice, comfortable temperature
Yeah,
after baby's born.
that makes sense. Wow.
Yeah.
That is so
Yeah, but
cool.
no hotter than 99, 100's
Yeah.
pushing it.
Mm,
The studies have shown, and I keep my own stats on my own practice.
mm,
Also, anything 100 or above can create tachycardia, which is an elevated heart rate in baby.
mhm.
And it can make mom a little bit um, just dizzy, and we don't want
Yeah,
that either.
right.
So we keep an eye on those things and make sure that everybody is comfortable and safe in that setting.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, this is awesome. I know that these are definitely good questions, that we're answering here today that I get all the time, so I'm glad that we have you as an expert to
Thank
kind of
you.
give us this evidence-based information, and I think that it's really, really valuable, and I'm learning a lot. I'm not planning on having another baby, but I know that this will definitely help with my clients, so thank you.
Yeah, it is something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
I have studied under Barbara Harper, who is the water birth midwife. She travels all over
Yeah.
the world, educating institutions, hospitals,
Mm,
birth centers, independent midwives. And then my dear friend Lisa Marie Oxenham, who is in Southern California. We were midwifery students together, and her
mm,
passion is water birth as well. So
that's
there are
amazing.
some of us out there. It's just getting the science to back it has been the
Mhm.
tricky part of it, and making sure that we can explain things thoroughly to people
Right.
to support it. And so hopefully more facilities will start incorporating water birth options.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
amazing. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well, when we're talking about this, because I know one of the other things you were thinking of covering today is just kind of the awareness of these options and kind
Mhm.
of maybe how you go about understanding what is right for you and what options are out there and this kind of informed decision making. So, if you have any tips or what people should be looking for as far as building their awareness and understanding what resonates most with them.
I think we're really fortunate, especially in Colorado, to have
Mm,
some options. We have more birth centers than I know of, as far as like compared to Southern California.
yeah.
We do definitely have more birth options.
Mm,
Um, so I think the first step would be, if it's somebody that has a normal, uncomplicated birth situation, if their pregnancy is uncomplicated, if their labor is uncomplicated, then I would definitely say explore your options. I think
yeah.
that would be step one. If it's something where you feel safest in the hospital and that is where you choose to go, many people are willing to travel different distances to birth in a hospital that has a water birth option.
Yeah.
So I would encourage exploration of options.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's the biggest thing, and many people will be able to discuss, like, lab values and make sure that you're ruled out of any complications.
Mm.
That's the biggest thing, is making sure that you're in safe parameters to be able to do that.
Yeah, that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense because you definitely wanna
Yeah.
if you don't feel comfortable, that's gonna affect your entire laboring process and birth process, so absolutely,
Yes.
there's not a one size fit all for the right way to birth, so I love that, we really
Yeah.
encourage that exploration, be informed, see what's out there, and then what resonates with you, is really, really
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, I know
Yeah.
that we were gonna kinda dive in unless there's some other things you wanted to talk about other than the questions to ask your provider, but I know you're super passionate about this, so I don't wanna try to, like, push any sort of topic, but if there's anything else you wanted to dive in before we talked about that, I the floor is open.
Um, I mean, water birth is something I could dork out on all day
Yeah.
long. I tell my clients that all the time. I'm like, "This is my thing."
Yeah.
No, I think the biggest thing is, really researching your options
Yeah.
and reaching out to different people, and there are a lot of different forums now with evidence-based information showing the safety of things.
Yes.
Um, that is a crucial component, especially when our partners have to be on board for that decision. So,
Yeah.
especially in a home birth setting, the partner usually comes in for most of the prenatal care. And I always explain how they need to be just as much informed as the
Yeah.
person birthing. So, that is a key component to things. And so, being able to provide that science is typically a really big thing as well.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's a really big component to choosing the birth in water in any environment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I love that you touched on the partner piece because I
yes,
feel like it is so important that you are on the same page, that you're approaching it as a team. Yes, the birthing parent is experiencing the most in this scenario, right? And
yeah,
so their comfort is super, super important. But you want this to be a way to unite you as a partnership and make sure that you're starting out this journey together and feeling
yeah,
supportive of one another and feeling like you've got each other's back and you're on the same page because I think that sets the foundation for everything after, right? So really working on your communication, ensuring that you are getting the same information at the same time if
mhm.
possible, and if not possible, making sure you're communicating that as clear as possible to your partner if they can't be there. Communication is just so key
Oh,
to really shoring up that relationship going into parenthood because there are challenges that we face once we are on the other side. Kids bring out the cracks in our relationship, and they can also make those stronger and bring the bond,
Mhm.
even closer. So I think it's really that awareness is really important. That's really what I work with my clients on a lot too, is like approach this as, a partnership and make sure that
Yes.
you are communicating and practicing those communication skills constantly.
Well, and that even pours into the provider that you hire.
Yes.
Because birth is such an intimate time,
Mhm.
there's the parents are the core of this
Mhm.
whole event that's going to
Right.
happen. But extending that bubble and going, who am I going to bring into this safe space is
Yeah.
a much bigger decision than I think a lot of people realize.
Mhm.
Um, it's I do a lot of communication with my clients, and there's a lot of emotional and mental work that goes into midwifery care.
Yes.
And so I get really good insight into what the dynamic is within the home, but
Mhm.
also how do I interact with them?
Yeah.
What traumas have they had? What experiences are they looking for? What boundaries do they have? So there's a lot
Mhm.
of this like dynamic dance that's constantly going on to make sure also that if we can do this whole process with beautiful fluidity and people feel heard
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
seen and supported, then
Yes.
we're setting them up for a really successful postpartum time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's
So
it's this continuation, which I think
it
is so
is.
important for people to grasp that concept. It's not like there's birth in a vacuum and then all of a sudden you're in postpartum. And it's like, no, there is
No.
so much connection to that. How we birth, how we labor can affect how we have our postpartum
Yeah.
experiences, can affect our connection with our baby, with
Yeah.
ourselves, with our partner. So I could not agree more that really making sure that the birth team and your
Mhm.
postpartum team, because you should have one of those too, who surround you are helping to, facilitate this connection and making sure that you feel safe, like contributing to that safety in
Yeah.
which you're birthing and which you're caring for your baby and healing yourself in postpartum. So I absolutely agree with that. I think that that's important for people to hear and understand because I didn't have any concept of that when I had my first
Yeah.
child. Like, it was like
I
I took the birth
definitely didn't.
I'm good. Yeah. I know what to
Well, and I
do.
think
Yeah.
yeah, like, I'll figure it out. That's
Right,
the thing I hear a
exactly.
lot is, we'll just figure it out." And I'm like, "That
Right.
is famous last words." Like,
Mhm.
let's not do
Absolutely.
that. Let's not figure
Right.
things out. Let's create a
Yeah.
game plan and have some flexibility in that game plan, because
Yes.
nothing can be fully structured in the birth world, we all know
Right.
that. But to
Mhm.
go, "Here's our ideal situation, and
Mhm.
where can we, um, kind of flow with things if things need to be adjusted a little bit." But
Absolutely.
that transparency with not only your partner, but your birth team, whether that's a doula, midwife, physician, that is such a key component to having a gentle birth. And I
Yeah.
know that birth outcomes are different across the board.
Mhm.
And we can still come out of it without trauma. We can
Right.
come out of it feeling like we were an active participant and made informed decisions,
Yes.
um, and be set up for success. Like that is the goal. When
Yeah.
a client works with me and I understand I love home birth. I wish
Mhm.
everyone who wanted a home birth could have a successful home birth. But I
Right.
remind people, you are hiring me for midwifery services
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
the plan to birth at home, but sometimes things shift and we have to adjust our course, and we do that safely and we communicate well about how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing of just making sure your whole team is there to support you
Yeah.
and that you can choose a birth environment that you feel might be best supportive in that process.
Yes.
It's such a huge component.
It really is. And what you
Yeah.
touched on as far as like the ideal scenario, and then okay, we do have to face what if things don't go exactly as planned? Because I think that when we prepare emotionally and mentally around that being a possibility, we're not
Mhm.
dooming ourselves. What we're doing is we're preparing ourselves, to be able to still feel like we are being heard. We have a little bit of control in
Yeah.
these decisions where it makes sense. And that is how we can, even when we don't have our ideal experience of birth, we don't necessarily have to have traumatic experiences of doing plan B, right? And I think that
Yeah.
that's where a big piece of birth planning goes wrong with a lot of people.
Mhm.
And it's not for lack of them, like, purposefully breezing over that. It's because we just don't talk about the emotional and mental component and how we can plan for those pieces. And so I really think that that's a big piece too. And I love that if you have a provider like a midwife who, like yourself, who's more aware of these like emotional
Mhm.
outcomes and how important it is for that birth person to feel seen and heard and in control where it makes sense, even in the not ideal situations. That's where it's most
Mhm.
important, because that's where the trauma can really start coming in if we have these outcomes we didn't want and it's our worst case scenario outcome. I have still spoken with people who have done this work and have avoided having a traumatic experience, even if it was their plan C, right? Birth, like they
Mhm.
didn't get their plan A, they had to do all the way to the plan C, but they were still able to feel seen and heard. And like
Yeah.
they had a experience that was still beautiful in a different way. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
that like attributes to that emotional inner work before birth for sure.
And I always say my goal is for my client to walk away from their birth feeling respected.
Yes.
That is the biggest thing. I can't predict. I'm not a fortune teller. I can't tell you where you're going to birth and what the outcome will be. But what I can promise is clear communication, honesty, transparency, and
Yeah.
that I will stay with you as long as you need me to stay with you.
Yeah.
And explanation is such a huge thing. I also equip like people that interview me and may say I want to go with a hospital birth or birth center birth. We constantly talk about how to advocate for yourself. And
Yes.
I always suggest doulas. Doulas are, oh,
Mm.
a chef's
Yeah.
kiss is what a
Mhm.
doula is. I
Absolutely.
love doulas. And
Yes.
so, yes, doulas are fantastic at helping honor the wishes of the birther
Yeah.
and their partner. Sometimes it's put on us a little bit too much to advocate for ourselves. And it's a really
Yes.
critical time to, we're not supposed to be in our thinking brain when we're
No.
birthing. That
Right.
is not, that's not supposed to be, we're supposed to sit back and let our body do the work.
Right.
So, yeah. And, to tie it back to water birth, I have a lot of couples that come to me with previous traumatic
Yeah.
experiences
Mhm.
in a variety of settings. That's not just hospital, that's a variety of settings.
Yeah.
And water has been a really healing component, even if they end up birthing on land, but laboring in water,
Mhm.
not only for the birther, but for their partner,
Yeah.
which has been really sweet as a midwife to witness and
Yeah.
see the healing that occurs within that partner going. I have an example of someone who was witness to his wife birthing and
Mm.
was pushed out of the way,
Oh.
completely pushed out of the way while she was pushing,
Mm.
and was crying in a corner because he felt like his job as a man and her husband was to
Mhm.
step in and advocate for her, but he couldn't.
Mhm.
He froze.
Yeah.
And so it allows for these opportunities for them to come on and experience healing for themselves
Mhm.
and to see how strong they are as a unified front. which I think
Yes.
is really cool to see.
Yeah.
Um, as well as many of them will help catch their babies. In my
Yeah.
practice, about 75% of my clients catch their own babies. And
Wow.
if it's not them, it's their partner, which is always the sweetest thing.
Yes. That's
And it's
amazing.
really healing for them.
Yeah.
It's really healing for them to feel like they were not just controlled, because I don't like that word in the birth world. But they feel like their wishes were honored and their
Yeah.
space was respected. And especially in home birth, I'm a guest in their home. So
Yeah.
it's their environment.
Yeah, I love that.
So
Centering the birth giver and their partner
yes.
in every way you can, because it's so important that they do feel like they are in control in areas that make sense. And then if they can't be
Mhm.
completely in control, they're at least informed and kept up
Yeah.
to date on things that are happening and still feel like they are seen,
Yeah.
during that process. And I loved what you said about it being healing, because I think even though I didn't have the full water birth with my second,
Mhm.
it was definitely my redemptive birth, because my first
Oh.
experience was very traumatic and I had a very traumatic postpartum, which is why I do what I do. And so being able to
Mm.
have that opportunity where, wow, like not only am I bringing my baby into this world, I'm being rebirthed into my motherhood in a really beautiful way and in a healing way. And I just think that is, I want that for everyone. I would hope that nobody would have the first traumatic experience, but if
Mhm.
they do, that they have this opportunity to have that redemptive birth and be able to have that healing happen through,
Yes.
the births that follow. So
I love
I
that so much. I do, and you're right, we don't have to have a traumatic experience the first round, and
Mhm,
that kind of leads into why it is so important to design your environment, to design your team. That is
mhm.
truly what it comes down to, is the body is going to do what the body needs to do, and I
Right.
believe babies are highly intelligent and they know exactly how to be born.
Yeah.
But when we don't interview and really select, like write down all of the things that are the most important components to your birth experience, and then
Mhm.
start interviewing. And I say interview until the shoe fits. Like
Yes.
we are in a position where you really can. And there's a
Mhm.
variety of birth workers in this area, which is great. You have hospital options and birth center options and home birth options. But I
Right.
would interview as many as possible until you go, all right, this feels good. And it needs to feel good, not just like that butterfly feeling in your stomach. It
Mhm.
needs to feel like a physical, this is a yes,
Yeah.
100% yes,
Yeah, that
because
energy
that will
alignment.
influence it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, something that I like to tell people too, which I'm sure you will echo, is let's say you've done that, but then down the road, some things happen and you're starting to feel like, wow, this is no longer a good fit, or maybe it wasn't a good fit from the beginning. It is
Mhm.
in your power to find a different provider. I don't want
Get
anybody who's watching
out.
this who feel like they have to stay the course. If you are not feeling comfortable and it is not a good fit, find somebody else. It's okay. Like, you need to feel that you are in control of that decision. It's so, so important.
Absolutely. And to continually ask them if, if you have 5 things that, if water birth is your number one thing, you
Mhm.
better be sure that they are comfortable supporting
Yes.
water birth, birthing in water, that they are skilled in that process. Why
Yes.
would they make you get out of the water? Like, there's a clear understanding of what the expectations are on both sides.
Yeah.
Again, back to that clear communication. And if it changes, get out. Like,
Yeah.
don't even second guess yourself. I That is normal. That does happen as,
Yeah.
your care with your client, your care with your provider starts moving along and you get to know each other a little better. If it's
Mhm.
not if it's not alignment, like don't be a martyr. Get out.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh. I always say don't be a martyr to your motherhood, and there is so many opportunities to apply that because it's like
Yes.
we're met with
Yes.
these challenges constantly throughout our journey into pregnancy and postpartum and just later on in motherhood. And it's like you don't
Yeah.
have to sacrifice your own well-being,
No.
your own comfort for what? Because
Yeah.
society is telling you to be meek and just, be quiet and don't make waves. Like, no, this is not what we're doing anymore. Like,
No.
we deserve to
Absolutely
have
not.
the Mhm.
And where I see that happen most is in labor.
Yep.
where we
Oh, yeah.
collapse and
Mhm.
somebody recommends something and then we consent because we
Yeah.
thought we'd get in trouble if we said no.
Yes.
So
Right.
that whole paradigm is shifting and I can see it and I'm like super
Mhm.
excited about it. Um,
Yes.
but we don't get to be infantilized when during labor. We need to be supported and respected, and we need to surround ourselves with providers. Our team needs to respect us and not call us honey, good girl. That was a
Yes.
great contraction, sweetheart. Like,
Right.
really take time picking the people who are going to support what your needs are. I cannot emphasize that more. And
Yes.
lay out your expectations. I've had people request the most wild things that I've never even thought of, and I'm like, "That's
Mhm.
very important to them." So,
Yeah.
all right, let's
Right.
do it.
Right, let's figure
Yeah.
it out. We're gonna make this happen in a way that makes the most sense, is safety-wise, but also it's what you need to feel like you
Yes.
can do this, right? Because it's hard and it's a long process, so you wanna feel the most supported that you can possibly feel during the whole experience.
And if we
For
can
sure.
create that level of emotional safety, the
Yes.
physical part just flows.
Yes, absolutely. I
It is
100% agree with
it is
that.
it's the births where everybody felt on the same page, emotionally they were supported. They've done all the mental, spiritual, emotional work through the whole pregnancy. They've
Yeah,
reached every fear. They've gone through all of it, got uncomfortable. I love those appointments where people come in and I'm like, today we get uncomfortable. Here we go.
yeah. Right?
And
Yep.
we talk about the things that they don't want to talk about. So we go,
Mhm.
we have to rip the band aid off to
Yeah.
uncover what our fears and doubts are, because that will get us across the finish line. So
Yes.
I love those parts because as soon as we confront the emotional, mental barriers, the body just steps up because it knows what to do. And then
Yes, and
it's a
having
safer outcome.
yes, absolutely.
It
I was just
is.
gonna say, and having that really important connection with that provider is paramount
Mhm.
because if there is not that safety to have those discussions, it's
Yeah.
not gonna happen. We're gonna kind of retreat into ourselves and kind of pacify and just say what we think they want us to hear and or they want, whatever. And it's just like you have to have that connection with your provider in a way
We
that
do.
feels safe to have those conversations. It's so, so important.
And that's hard to do in a 5-minute
It
prenatal.
is. I was gonna say, which why I love that you spend an hour in your prenatal appointments. How many do
Mhm.
you have usually before birth with your clients?
Um, we have anywhere from 12 to 15 if somebody starts at the beginning of care. I follow a very similar OB model of every 4 weeks till 28 weeks,
Yeah.
bi-monthly until 36, and then weekly until birth. Um,
Yes.
but it's family-centered care, which I love so much. So
Yeah.
I get to meet the other children. Um, so they know who this midwife is walking into their home at 2
Yeah.
a.m.
Right, right.
But it's like this beautiful conversation, just like what you and I are doing now. And we just kind of see where it leads. And those are the things we're supposed to talk about that day. But
Yes.
we get to know our families really, really well. And I think that just adds an extra layer of safety,
Absolutely.
truly. Yeah.
Absolutely, where you're just really strengthening that connection, human
Yeah.
to human, and not just like this interaction of, okay, this person's just gonna be here when the time comes. Like, no, we have to build this bridge, before then
Yeah.
to feel really connected and safe.
And then
Absolutely.
that flows into postpartum as well.
Yes.
So, the
Yes.
postpartum, I do 6 visits for postpartum,
I love that.
and that is necessary.
Yes, it is, and I wish the whole model would shift to that because we are failing our postpartum families,
Yeah. I
because we're
offer
just
between 4 to 6 depending on what the client needs, but the
yeah,
first 2 are done in their home and the rest are in my office,
I love that.
because we need someone checking on us.
Yes.
We really need not a phone call, but eyes on us to go,
Yeah.
and you've established a relationship, hopefully, at that point where you can
Mhm.
go, "This isn't normal behavior," or, "There's some red flags here."
Yeah,
So, yeah, and
absolutely.
all of that, we are set up, as you know, this is your wheelhouse. As we get into that postpartum time, our prenatal care, our birth experience, all of those things, can either make or break that
Yes,
postpartum time and our
100%.
breastfeeding relationship with our babies.
Yes, oh my gosh, it's all interconnected. It is so
Always.
interconnected. Oh my gosh. Well,
Always.
this time flew by because this has been like
I
the
know.
best episode, and I can't believe we're almost at time. So I want to give you the opportunity to share, how can people connect with you? Where can they find you in the big world of the internet to connect?
Yeah. My Instagram handle is midwife Jen Grieco. My website is jengreco.com. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. I love connecting with people in our community. I'm hoping to do more community groups in person, which is a lot of fun. And then maybe we'll do some virtual ones as well, because I still have friends and coworkers in Southern California that I just love and adore.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are probably the easiest ways to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much again for joining, Jen. This has been a wonderful, wonderful
Yeah. Thank
episode.
you.
Yes,
It was
and I'm really excited.
wonderful.
I'll put all of those connections in the show notes when we have the replay set up. And I just wanted to remind everybody watching that my Beyond Birth prep course, so it is a postpartum prep course, is available, and you can find that, the link in my bio, at empowering_postpartum. And this is designed to walk you through step by step in creating your own custom holistic postpartum plan before birth, so that you can really feel that confidence, calm, and supported throughout your transition into motherhood. So definitely check that out if you're interested. Remember that this show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.